obviously I had no idea what you guys were talking
Well, the podcast is mainly about addiction, and it's about mainly about drug addiction, but also about other addictions. Because I'm a former drug addict, I'm also a nurse and a former ex-fighter, a professional fighter, and my other podcast host is a fireman and also an ex-drug addict. So we talk about addiction, but we talk about sports, relationships, being a man, self improvement. But the big thing here is that there's nobody else in Finland who is like us. So that's why we're getting, of course, there's a lot of technical stuff I know about YouTube and that kind of stuff, but uh, to, to the stories, there's nobody else like us. So that's why we're kind of have a how do you say, the monopoly over the market because there's nobody like us.
Interesting. Because, yeah, and
Yeah,
I guess it's only the only people who speak Finnish are in Finland, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's where your audience is coming from.
yeah. And I'm kind of bummed out about it because I have a large audience in Twitter, and I'm trying to get uh, I'm trying to figure out how I can get captions in English. So because people have been asking what's the podcast about, and it's really entertaining. So I would like to put it in English. My co-host doesn't speak English, so it's kind of the only way I can do it is do captions in English.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I feel like this technology is changing so quickly. It's like in no time, I'm sure we'll be able to have like dubbed over your speech,
yeah, yeah,
like the English translation.
yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's go back to the start and learn about how you grew up in Lapland, Finland.
Yeah. Actually, I was born in Malta. You know where Malta is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my father is the Egyptian and my mother is Finnish, so I'm half Arabic and half Finnish. I don't really speak Arabic, but I am half Arabic, and I grew up in Lapland in a town called Rovaniemi. It's actually in the border of Lapland, and people from all over the world come there and see the Santa Claus because there's the official Santa Claus. His cottage is there in Rovaniemi. But yeah, I grew up there and I was born in 1980, so it was the years like 83 to 97. Those those years I spent in Rovaniemi. But if I tell you about my childhood, it was kind of rough because I got bullied real bad in school because I was different from my background and I gotta tell you, in the 90s, Rovaniemi wasn't the most fucking, sorry, I'm cursing, but it wasn't the most, uh, how do you say it? What's the word in English? Like, what's the word? It's not like racist, but it wasn't the most, hmm, I'm having hard time to figure out the word, but people like hated everything that was different. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I got bullied for being my hair was red and I was Egyptian, half Egyptian. My father was Arabic, and my father was a doctor, and but he suffered from schizophrenia, so he was in the hospital most of the time. So I don't even have a relationship. Didn't have a relationship with my father. So
How did your parents
that
meet?
they met in Africa. My mother was a librarian, and she was teaching in Zambia, and well, is it in Zambia in English? I think, and met
Yeah.
my father there. Yeah, my father was like he was a doctor. He was really good looking, and he was a womanizer, and I have a lot of half sisters and half brothers, like 7 or 8, because my father was like he was really he was a womanizer, and
They're
yeah.
older than you?
Excuse me.
The half brothers and sisters are older than you.
Yeah, they're older than me, and they live like one lives in Netherlands, and I think the other ones live in Egypt. But I only talked with one of them. He's my brother from Netherlands, and yeah, I don't know the other ones.
And then your parents moved to Malta together.
Yeah, they moved to Malta together. They moved to Finland from there. But that's the point. My father started to have the schizophrenic symptoms, and he couldn't hold a job, and he got mm, what was the word? He went to the hospital for the from the mental issues, and my mother was left with me and my sister only. And like I told you, the bullying was really bad, and like I I remember I was going to school, and I couldn't go to school with the bus like everybody else because I knew I would get bullied, and I had to walk through this forest just to avoid the bullies and yeah, and not, excuse me, not get into these situations with them because it was kind of horrible at that age because you're like 8, 9, 10 years old, and they made it seem that there's something wrong with me, and nobody. I didn't have a father, to talk about it, so I didn't talk about it with anyone, and it made me really angry and revengeful to the world. But that all changed when I found. I think the year was 1991, and I found this boxer called Mike Tyson, and uh, I was started watching tapes of him, and I went to this boxing class and started boxing, and didn't even tell anyone that I was boxing. And the situation when like these guys, they I was going back home, and a bunch of these guys who were bullying me found me, and but because I was boxing, I had my self confidence up, and I told the main guy who was teasing me and bullying that you can't, you're too afraid to fight with me, and but because there were so many guys there, he had to fight with me. There was no choice, and I beat the shit out of him, and that's the moment my your status changes from the bullied to something else, and
Huh.
after
So,
that, yeah,
what kind of things were they doing to you initially?
they were calling names, and there was a lot of things, and physical violence, a lot of physical violence, and never like one person, always two or three, and there was some bad things, like they made me eat feces, and you know
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, yeah, it was horrible, and
And and they were kids that were your age.
yeah, yeah, a bit older or my age, and there was a lot of like incidents because I had a crush on my uh, sister's friend, and because I wasn't good with girls and anything like that, because I was so lonely and bullied. I kept her picture under my pillow. But my sister threw this party, and uh, my mother wasn't home, and my sister threw this party, and there were some boys who found the picture under my pillow, and they told everybody about it. That was like,
Oh,
that I was bullied, and because I was bullied, my status was real bad, and that made it worse. But after the fight incident, everything started to change, and but it didn't change in a good way because mm, I learned this way that to get something you have to be violent. You have to be like you have to do extreme violence to others. I wasn't a bully, but I was really violent after that, and so violent that I got dispelled from the boxing stuff. I did it for a few years, and but
How
I
did
got
that happen?
into because I got into a lot of fights outside the box, like in the street, and I used my skills and uh, but at the same time, I got to meet a bunch of new friends who were kind of people I always like looked up to in school. That they were free and uh, they stayed up late and they drank alcohol and like it's the tough guys and the cool kids. I was never a cool kid before that, and then when I beat that one guy up, I started to meet these other people and at the time, when you're a kid, it feels like it. That we know as adults that that's not a good way. You're going in a bad direction. But as a kid, that feels like exciting and the fighting and everything. It doesn't feel like as an adult, you know that it's a bad thing. But it feels like it's an adventure and the guys who were drinking and they were sniffing glue and using a little bit of medicine pills and that kind of stuff and all that felt like exciting from because before I was alone, no friends, reading a lot, always inside my head, no feeling different from everybody else, feeling that I'm a fucking alien. So the contrast was so big.
So that fight happened when you were 11, or that's when you started boxing?
I started boxing when I was 10, but the fight happened like 11 or something. Yeah.
And then when did you start drinking?
uh I started drinking. I think I was almost 12. Yeah. I remember it well. I told this story many times. We drink it. I was with those new friends and we were drinking this concoction of, I think it's water, sugar, and wheat. And it tastes disgusting like vomit. But we drank that stuff and we went to the town and there was this girl from school. Uh, I had a crush on. I never had the guts to go and talk to her, but I was drunk and my first time drunk, and I went, I went to her, went down on my knees and told her that I love her, and she said to me, "Fuck off," and and I was there like begging, all drunk and everything, and that was a funny thing because the next day I went to school and or the other day and he had told everybody about it and but it wasn't that bad because I already had the reputation and everything.
Huh. And so the fights you would get into, were they mostly alcohol fueled?
Yeah, they were alcohol fuel or some kind of a uh, dispute with somebody. uh, it's hard to say what started those fights, but there was a lot of those fights that there was like this thing that uh, how do I say it in English, that there's this kind of a reputation that if you are a good fighter, somebody wants to fight you. That was the most of the cases that in that stage, like that age. Later it was other stuff, but at that age it was almost all of it was that I had a reputation. I was a boxer, and yeah. And
And what was gone?
every time somebody uh, said that they want to fight me, I would fight them. I wouldn't back off, and I would fight them.
And you were good.
Yeah, I was good because I knew boxing, and that's the thing with fighting, that if you don't know how to do it, man and kids are like this, that they think that they know how to fight, but they don't know how to fight. If somebody has trained how to fight, they're automatically better at fighting. That's just like with any sport, like football or anything. It's just like that, and
Because what
and
they'll,
especially with fighting, because if somebody is punching you, the human instinct isn't to fight back. The human instinct is to run away. That's our base emotional instinct, is to run away, not to fight. So if you don't know how to fight, that's the way you will react.
huh? So it's more like a mental thing.
Yeah, it's more like a mental. Yeah.
Interesting. And what was Rovaniemi like back then? Because yeah, I've been there with my family at Christmas to do that whole thing and like the huskies and the snowmobiles and whatever you do. Visit Santa. Was it
Yeah,
touristy like that back then?
it was really dark, and because Finland had this recession in the 90s, and it showed like people were losing their jobs. There was a lot of alcoholism in the families. Almost everybody's father was an alcoholic, everybody I knew. And of course, it showed to the kids that everybody was kind of miserable. And there was actually, because in the winter it gets so fucking cold. It's like now in Tampere it's -6 or 7. Rovaniemi is -30 every winter. It's dark. There's no sunlight, and there's nothing to do but to fight or drink or something like that.
Huh.
So
And then what about,
it was really it was really like it was really gloomy, you know.
and the summers don't make up for it?
The summers were great because that's the complete opposite. The sun doesn't go down; it's sun all day, even in the night, and everybody's out. It's complete opposite of everything. And I think that's the problem, because the summer is so good and the winter is so dark. So I think there's statistics from Finland that most people get depressed, and most suicides are uh, done in September, October, November, December, because those are the darkest months in Finland. And it gets really dark, and you can see it in everybody's mood. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it gets dark by like 2 p.m., right?
yeah, and yeah, and it's like the whole October, November, December is like that.
Mm. And so was your dad okay, or is he still alive?
He he's dead now. He died in 2019. But he died. He was 84 years old, and he died from natural causes. There's nothing dramatic about it. He was just an old man.
But he spent most of his life in hospital. That
Yeah, he spent. Uh, uh, when I was a child, he was in the hospital most of the time. But later, my mom took custody over him, and he lived lived with my mom. Uh, I think until 80 years old. But then his psychosis or schizophrenia went really bad, and actually I was the one who took him into the hospital, and he was half blind at that stage, and I took him into the hospital, but in the hospital he was okay, and he got I think the problem was with his medicine, and it wasn't like the right medicine. But in the hospital, he got the medicine right, and he was actually really okay in the last days of his life.
and do you have any fond memories with him before he got sick?
No, no, nothing. No.
Did you have a good relationship with your mom?
Yeah, yeah, I still have a good relationship with my mother, but she was kind of because she was a kind of a single mom because my father was gone, so she was really tired all the time, and I remember her like telling us all the time that she's tired. And you know, when you're a kid and you hear that, you kind of take it to yourself, and because my situation was bad with the other stuff, it was mentally really taxing. But I found a lot of like release from reading. I think that's why I'm such a good writer because I read a lot when I was a child. I read so much and mainly fantasy and that because that was a release from reality and but yeah, yeah,
And so was she worried about you when you got into drinking and fighting?
yes, she was, but I didn't like because I went to school. My sister got she had this situation that she didn't go to school and they took her to a foster home because she didn't want to go to school. But I always went to school and my fighting and other stuff, mother found out only later when I started to get involved. Police started to get involved and the criminal stuff started to come. So I I was able to keep it kind of a secret for a long time
Hmm.
because I always went to school and I didn't like miss days or anything and yeah.
And what was kind of, do you know like what your mum wanted for you, or what would a good outcome be in that from that school, or is it kind of like bit of a hopeless time where there weren't that many jobs and it was just like you had to survive?
Mhm. I don't think my mother like I we had a good relationship, but she never told me that what she wanted for us. At least I can't remember it because, yeah. But I have to tell you that when I was like 13, 14, I didn't, that was like the time when most of my time I was somewhere else all the time. And my relationship with my mother started to be like, it was more, it was distant, more distant. And that
Mhm.
was the time when the drugs started to come in also.
Yeah. But I guess what was like the best case scenario from someone at school? Or people would do well at school and then go, would people move away to go to uni, or there were
Uh,
good jobs
so
available?
for Finland, it's like there's like uh, I don't know the words, but it's like 6 years of is it like elementary school, and then there's like 3 years of it's not high school, but it's before high school, and then uh, you have to go to high school or you go to some school that you get a profession from. You can go or and after that you will go to the university. But there's this stage. It's kind of hard to explain in English because I don't know the words for the system is a bit different.
Hmm.
But for context, I went through the 6 year thing and then I went through the 3 year thing. And then because my grades were so bad, I there was this thing called the 10th class. And that's designed for kids who want to raise their grades and everything. And I went to that. But at that stage, I quit that school because I was so addicted to drugs at that time. So I couldn't finish it.
Huh. And is that what was having the negative effect on your grades?
Yeah, yeah, because I didn't give a damn about school. All I wanted to do was use drugs and have fun with uh, stay up all night and steal cars and that was what I wanted to do.
Huh. So what was your pathway into drugs? So it started with drinking.
It started like I told you the story. It started with drinking, and the thing I noticed, the first thing I noticed with alcohol is that because I had this feeling of myself that I'm not complete. Something is missing. Like I had that feeling from I don't remember like first time like I I I get a consciousness about myself like 4 or 5 years old. I had the feeling there's something missing and there's I couldn't like place it or it was this thing that there's something missing from me and because I was bullied it also made it stronger that there's something wrong with me that
Huh.
you know that and that when I used alcohol that went away. I felt like I could talk to girls. I could talk to anybody. I felt whole, and alcohol made it like it wasn't as strong as other drugs. I will come to it later, but it made the feeling that something changed inside me. So I was really hooked at alcohol, and when I met those new friends, they also smoked. Uh, what do you call it in English? Cannabis, weed. They smoke weed, and when we started smoking weed and using pills, uh, then it started to go a little bit further, and it was so
What
fun
kind of
and exciting. Yeah,
what kind of pills were they?
they're like benzodiazepines. I don't know the word in English, but they're like uh, Xanax. I think is one of those pills.
Huh. Okay.
Valium, Xanax, like sedatives.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
was the alcohol mostly vodka, or is that a
no,
stereotype?
it was beer and that's the thing with Finland. Finland, there's a lot of alcoholics, and everybody's drinking everything. And I know this because I was in Ireland later in my life, and the Irish people they were saying to me that you drink weird because they told me that when they go out, they only drink one thing. Like if they go out, they only drink vodka, but I would drink fucking everything. Like that's the way we drink in Finland. When we go out, we will drink vodka, liquor, beer, wine. We will drink everything, and that's the way we drink. That and there's a lot of fights after that.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah,
So then it was became pills. And this is still when you're
pills.
like 13 or 14 or something.
Yeah, 13, 14, and there was the pills and weed, and we started to uh, experiment with them, and but it went really fast from experiments to daily use. But the problem with that was because I lived in Rovaniemi, the only drugs that were available was weed, uh, those pills, sometimes LSD, ecstasy, and speed, amphetamine, but mostly amphetamine and weed. That was the only drugs that were available most of the time. And we didn't want to use amphetamines at the beginning, so we used cannabis, and it went from using like once a week to using it every day. But most of the time went to finding the cannabis. It wasn't easy to get because everybody was trying to get it, and it wasn't like now you can order it from in the internet. You had to like
Huh.
find the people and yeah.
And you were doing this with these friends from the boxing gym?
No, there were the boxing gym was different people. I met these other after that fight thing. I met these other guys who there was. It's not like a gang, but there was this group of guys who were a little bit like they were not criminals, but they were like doing stuff that little stuff that's stealing from the shops and I met them in school and I became friends with them and they also went to this youth house and we went there together and because there was like they were doing this criminal stuff a little bit, but they were also like uh, into sports and video games, and so all we were doing that stuff also. So it wasn't all bad, uh, but we were staying up all night and trying to find weed every day and play video games and you know like yeah.
And how
But
did you get? Sorry, go on.
after it all changed when we started using amphetamine. That's when everything changed.
Huh? In what way?
Because when we started using amphetamine, the first times we started, we didn't. There was three ways to use it. You could sniff it, or you could eat it, or you could inject it. And we started sniffing it, and the thing with amphetamine, because it was so expensive and it changes the way you feel and you start to like I started to get this, how do you say, I didn't have relationships with, with girls or uh, women, but I had a relationship with the amphetamine. Like I started to get this emotional attachment with the drugs and it's kind of hard to explain, but when you had the drugs you were okay, but when you didn't have the drugs you were like empty and always thinking about the drugs and everybody around me was the same. And then because the drugs were expensive, you had to we had to steal cars, we had to steal from stores and to get the money to the drugs. So you can see where this is all going. Like there's this circle that to get those drugs you have to you have to steal cars and steal stereos from the cars and all that kind of stuff.
Huh? So do you remember the first time you tried it?
I don't remember the first time I tried amphetamine, but I remember the first time I injected it, and that because I already had been using amphetamine for I think 3 or 4 months, and one of my friends started injecting it, and it was always like this thing that the guys who were injecting speed, they went to the bathroom and the door was closed and they didn't want anybody to see it, and we we who weren't injecting it were always like, what the hell are they doing there? And one of my friends started doing it and with some other guys, and I was really thinking about it. And then I remember the time I was sitting in a bus and I decided I wanna try it. And then I called my friend and told him that I wanna try it and inject it. And then we went to another friend of ours and I went to the bathroom with him. I remember his girlfriend was there and she wanted to come to the bathroom and see how does it all go and my friend took the syringe and injected me with speed, and then everything changed. Like I never felt anything like that in my life, and I will never feel anything like that in my life. And I believe that humans are not like, you're not supposed to feel like that. What the amphetamine made me feel, it made me feel like I'm completely whole, and and this euphoric sexual, uh how do you say, like feeling of good and love and like everything felt right and that lasted like the whole night, but never after that it felt like that. But always, even now when I'm speaking with you, I get goosebumps. It's fucking 22 years. I've been 22 years clean, and I still feel it like the first time I used it, and there's no feeling like that. You won't get it from no. How do I say it? I never got anything. Never felt like that from anything. Not a woman I loved, not a fight I won, not even my child. Nothing. I never felt something like that. That's on a whole. I never want to feel it like anything like that because I can't handle that kind of feeling.
Huh. And so it was a totally different level than just sniffing it.
Yeah, it changed everything, and after that, like I was all I didn't want to do anything else. I only wanted to use speed, and that was like I was in love. That's the best way to describe it. I was in love like you would be in love with a man, or I would be in love with a woman. I was in love with that substance, and I would do anything to get it, and I did anything to get it. I stole. Uh, I would be violent and to other people and steal their stuff and threaten people and all the stuff we do as a drug addict.
Huh. And so how much would it cost for like one, I don't know the terminology, like one hit or whatever?
It's you usually buy it like you buy half a gram or a gram, and from half a gram you could at the start you could use two doses, maybe three, but two. But of course the tolerance will go up, and you need more. But one because now it's euros in Europe, but that in that 90s the money was different. But let's say that it was like 40 euros a dose.
Okay, so if you stole a car, you would be able to pay for like a month's supply or
Yeah,
something.
I would steal a car and then I would take the car and then I would get a, like grams of speed from the car because they would just take the parts of the car and they would like it also depended about the car, which kind of a car was it. But that was
And
one way of getting.
did you have to do that all yourself, or you were able to like you had to go and sell the car for parts to then get money to then give money to the dealer, or you could just
Yeah,
give the dealer stolen stuff?
no, there was this shop. We would steal the car. We would drive the car to the shop. They would rip the car apart. They would give us money. We would buy a speed with it from the dealer. The the way it usually went. And but of course, because people got caught and police was involved, these things didn't last very long. So we also always had to adapt. Like there was a time there was no car, nobody was paying for the car. So then we stole something else and or I hate to say this, but I also robbed a lot of people, like old ladies and like that. Like, you know, they were walking in the street and we would take their handbags and that kind of stuff. Or
Mm-hmm.
I went with a knife to a fucking kiosk and told them to give our money and that kind. We did a lot of that kind of stuff.
And you wouldn't be high when that was happening. You'd be like on the calm down or whatever.
It depends. Like, usually I was high on something. I can't remember a day that I wasn't high on something. Usually I was high. all the time.
Huh. And you just
And the
knew,
first,
like, I have to keep feeding this.
yeah, but the first signs of I noticed that this there's something wrong with this lifestyle is because my friend died from an overdose. I was uh, I was 16 and a half, or no, 17, and he died from an overdose. And then shortly after that, I took some weird speed that burned my veins from my left hand to the side of my head, and I went to the hospital. And I thought there was a blood vessel exploded in my head, but the thing that happened, the speed was so there was some substance in there that shouldn't be, so it burned my vein, and I had a nerve damage in my head, and I went to this kind of a semi-psychosis that I couldn't. I had these big pains in my head, and the only way I would go outside was like I was holding my head like this, and I had a hoodie on, and I would walk like this outside, holding my hand in my head, and the only way I got the pain away is to take some pills, and then I could take some speed again. But I couldn't take speed without the pills because it hurt so much after that, and these kind of things started to happen, and then I started to get this idea in my head that there's something wrong with this. But the problem was with every addict that when I started to tell my friends that I want to stop, and I even tried to stop, but that's the problem with addiction. You can make the decision to stop, but you can't stop even if you want to stop. And I tried a lot of things. I went to I moved to Ireland. It's hard to say Ireland, Ireland, Ireland. Yeah, and I stayed there in Cork for 3 months, and but in there I also met addicts really fast, and the problem, because that's always the solution for people, that they want to move somewhere else so they can change, the addiction will go away, but it won't go away because the addiction is you, and you will bring the addiction with you. And I moved to another town in Finland. I moved to another country, like I told you, and always it ended up in the same situation, me using drugs again. It never, the changing of the town or the place didn't mean anything.
So were you still living at home in the first years of using drugs?
Yeah, yeah. But then I moved with my friend. Uh, I moved with my friend, but I got evicted real fast from there, so I moved back to my mother. But then I went uh, to another country, and then I was there 3 months. Then I got back to Finland. Then I moved to another town in Finland and stayed there for a while. And you know that kind of. I always try to move to another place and try to
So
change the situation.
so was it after your friend died that you decided you wanted to stop?
Yeah, that was the first time. Not exactly when my friend died, but it was after the incident with the speed and the nerve damage. That was the first time and I know this with all of my friends that everybody, it went real weird that if, let's say, this is like this will describe the situation very well, that if you passed out, you knew that everybody will take your money and everything. So there was no friends anymore. Like after that incident, and we were using so hard, and if a friend would pass out, we would just take the money from his pocket and leave him there or something. So there, it was really like it was really bad.
Huh. And what happened with your friend? Were you close to him?
The one who died.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was close. I was close to him. Uh, he died from an overdose, and it was kind of hard because just such a long time ago, and I was so fucked up with the drugs. It's kind of hard to like remember that time of my life because I was so every day I was so high on something. So I remember it happening, but it was when I describe it to you, it feels like a dream. It's happened to somebody else
Mm,
because I was a different person. Like that life was all about lying, stealing, and cheating. Nothing else. Lying, cheating, stealing.
mm. And how does it make you act? Like when you're
In what
high
way?
on speed?
It makes you speed is like a you could say it's a fast drug. Heroin is a slow drug, and it makes you sleepy and tired and very euphoric and but speed is completely different. You're always moving and doing stuff and talking fast, and your mind is working very fast, but it isn't exactly working really fast. But it kind of and it also at the same time it feels really good, like a sexual feeling. You feel like euphoric all the time, and but the thing with that is that it doesn't last very long after the first hit. So it was like 2 to 3 hours, and then you have to take it again, and also the side effect is that you don't sleep and you stay awake for long. I was awake like for a week. You know when you're awake for one night you're already like kind of mixed up, but I was awake for a week many times with speed, and you start to see these shadows everywhere, and you start to go a little bit crazy, and people went crazy.
And would you drink during this time as well, or not really?
Yeah, yeah, and we would use everything, but like I told you, there's only speed and weed and sometimes ecstasy and LSD and those pills available. So every time there was something available, but if my drug of choice was always speed, but if there was something else, I would take it also.
And was heroin just not available, or is there a reason you didn't do that?
It was not available. The only uh, thing that was available later that was close to heroin was I don't know what's it in English, but they use it for heroin treatment. It's an opiate like heroin,
Uh-huh.
uh, and it was it's a medicine used as a medicine, but it's a street drug also in Finland. So, but that it's not heroin. It's used for the symptoms of heroin withdrawal, and but heroin was available in. I knew you could get it in Helsinki, but it was really expensive, and nobody really had the money to get it. And yeah, it was
And
really expensive.
what about crystal meth?
Well, speed is crystal meth, kind of.
Huh.
It's there's amphetamine and crystal meth is like methamphetamine, so it's more uh, powerful, but it wasn't like available. There was only speed.
Uh-huh.
Crystal meth, there was sometimes it was available, but it was also a bit more expensive. And
Mm.
yeah,
And
there
what
wasn't a
that would,
lot of choices with drugs.
huh? And what? It was just the one drug dealer in the town.
No, there was a lot of drug dealers, but there was not because everybody wanted it, so they could like ask a lot of money for it. So it wasn't so. Uh, of course, after I started selling drugs, also then it became available more. And but the problem with that was that when I took drugs for sale, I used a lot of them myself, so I would get into debt with that, and I had to run away from the other drug dealers.
Huh. Were most of the drug dealers using drugs as well?
Yeah, yeah, everybody was using, who were involved with the drug game, they were using something. There was no like, you kind of knew that the drugs were coming from Russia because we are the neighbor of Russia, and the Russians don't use, but they were never like, rarely we would see those guys. But when we would see those guys, we knew that you don't want to fuck with those guys because they will kill you. Like, but they won't use drugs, but they will kill you.
If you don't pay them or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a lot of middleman between those Russians and but sometimes we knew that, of course, because we're all mixed with those circles of people, we knew that that guy is like, you don't want to mess with that guy, and some of those Russians you didn't even want to talk to them because they were really, they would kill you if you fucking did something stupid.
Huh. So they would be making the drugs in a lab in Russia and then
Yeah, yeah.
transporting them over.
Usually, the Russians will sell the drugs to a motor like Hells Angels, or there was that time there was Hells Angels, Cannonballs, and Bandidos. Those were the gangs that were selling the drugs, and the gangs would sell the drugs to a like a local drug dealer, and they would sell it to us until we became the local drug dealers, and that was like the chain of the supply chain of drugs.
Huh. And interesting. So would you ever deal with people who weren't using drugs and they were just happy to make money and like see you suffering?
No, not because those were those Russian guys, and we didn't like deal with those guys. We usually dealt with those uh, uh, local drug dealers or the biker gangs. Those guys, they were all using something.
Huh. Got it. Okay, so how did you Oh yeah, was your mum trying to do something during this time?
Yeah, and I went to treatment for a while also. She got me into treatment, and but they didn't go. The treatment was, there was only one incident I remember. I went to my first AA meeting in the treatment center, and it was full of these old guys with red noses and fucking big bellies, and I was looking at the old guys, and I don't want to be something like that, and I went straight out of there, and that was my uh, first time I was in a meeting, and but later I wanted, because I told you my friend died and all this stuff started to happen, and in the back of my head I always wanted to like get out of the drugs, but I didn't know how and I gonna stop. So like I told you, I tried to move to another town, and I did that a couple of times. Then I moved here to Tampere, and uh, I went to school here. I tried to go to school, but I couldn't attend the school because I was so addicted to drugs. But the school had this counselor who told me I had to go to treatment. Or she didn't tell me I had to go to treatment, but she said that your situation is so bad that you're like, you can't go to school, and you will lose the place you live if you don't go to treatment. And then I went to the treatment center, and that led me to uh, go to my first NA meeting, and NA meaning Narcotics Anonymous, and and but I didn't get clean uh, from the first time I went to treatment in Tampere. I I went to treatment, I relapsed. I went back to treatment, I relapsed again. But the first time I relapsed, I used like 6 months straight, and then came the situation. I was in Tampere, and there's a lot of stuff happening between, but if I go too detail, this will be take too long. So I will tell you that I lived with my friend in Tampere. That was the last time I relapsed, the 6 months, and I remember I woke up from his place. Uh, I had this half of a mattress that I slept in, and a poncho I stole from a shop as a blanket. I woke up, I saw the place, and it was full of bags with syringes, used syringes. And my friend was sitting in a table. He had a knife in his hand. He was carving the table, and he was telling me a story that he told many times. And then I somehow, I just, I just, I just hit rock bottom at that moment. And then I went in front of a mirror and I looked at myself, and I was like, I was a complete like skeleton. Like I, I had no veins left to inject anything, and I looked into my eyes; it was all black. And then I started to cry, but at that moment I realized that I'm fucking done. I'm done. I'm going back to those meetings. I'm telling those people I'll do anything that I don't have to use again, and that's what I exactly did.
How old were you at that point?
21,
And
21.
you'd been trying for a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. I was clean the first time. I was clean 3 months. Then I relapsed. Then I was clean 3 months again. I relapsed for 6 months, and then this happened. And I had this. Uh, I was going to jail for criminal stuff, and I had this meeting with uh, it's called a criminal agency or something in Finland, and you have to tell your criminal history to the person who's interviewing. And as I was telling her, this was the next day I was in the front of the mirror. The next day this happened, and I went there. I told her the story, and I told her that I want to go to treatment, and she said that you won't have to go to jail if you go to treatment now. I went to treatment. I went to this rehab center. It was full of other drug addicts, and I told the staff there that they're using drugs, so they kicked everybody else out there. I was left with the alcoholics because I knew that if I'm there in the rehab with other drug addicts, I will use again. So they were using drugs in the rehab center. I knew about it. So I told the
Wow.
staff, they kicked everybody fucking out, and I was left with the alcoholics, and I was okay.
Huh. And then
And
how long were you in that for?
I was there for 6 weeks, and after that, I went to a longer treatment that lasted over a year.
Living
But
there?
it was like, yeah, it was in town the treatment, and we would work the days, and then in the evenings we would go to these meetings, and also I think 3 days were work and 2 days were treatment, like group meetings and group therapy, and I was there over a year, and at that time uh, I got my first year clean. I got my own place, and I started to get back into life again. But it was I can tell you it wasn't easy because from using drugs from a teenager to 21 years old, and then you don't have those drugs, and you start everything that you do normally felt weird, like me talking to you, this kind of a conversation would have never happened, like because I was too fucking messed up, and full of anxiety and like shame and everything, and even talking to a phone felt weird, and going to a bus felt weird because I was thinking that everybody's thinking about me, and everything felt weird because there was no drugs to like help me with those situations, and but that's the point. You have to deal with those situations. and slowly I started to deal with those situations and like talking to people, which was fucking hard. Like this, like I couldn't do something like this ever as a 21-year-old. I just didn't have the skills to talk with another human being without drugs. I would
Huh.
be so. Uh, but it wasn't just me; it was everybody else also who started in the treatment center with me, and so I wasn't alone with it.
So what does it feel like when you're coming off completely?
It well after the physical withdrawal went away, which was kind of fast. It took like 6 weeks or something. Then it was off. But after that, it like I said, it felt weird because like you're like this whole thing. Always when I'm telling this story to somebody, I told this story many times, of course, uh, but it always feels that the you live two lives, like that other life feels like it's happened to somebody else. I don't like when I'm telling you this, it feels like a dream or somebody else did it. But of course it's my life, but it feels weird because you're but also at the same time it felt weird. It felt very good. Like I remember I was drinking a coffee in this porch and the first time I was like hearing the birds sing and I was like, what the fuck? And everything felt weird, like sun and like I was clean and I was like alive again, because that was the when you're filled with drugs and you feel like you're a undead zombie in a kind of weird way, and then you're alive again. But of course, it also brought a lot of shame because I noticed the other 21 years old, my age, they were like, went to school and they were socially very good with other people. I was socially bad. You get this feeling of you don't have a lot of self confidence. Of course, the things I did also affected because I was so violent and did those crimes and all of that is inside you. Yeah.
Did you ever have to spend time in prison
Yeah, yeah,
when you were younger
yeah. When I was younger, yeah.
in
But not,
juvenile?
but not. I was in prison for a while, but it was never a long time because the crimes were always an assault or minor drug use or stealing a car. You don't get a lot of it's. It's not the same as in other countries. Finland, you don't get. You have to steal like 4 or 5 cars even to get a jail time sentence. You always get a fine first, and it's like a week or something, not a long time.
Huh. And were you able to get drugs in that time, or you were fine to go a
Yeah,
week
yeah. The
without?
jails are full of drugs. The worst crime I did, I stabbed one guy, uh, but even that, I stabbed that guy. I didn't get a jail sentence from that. I got 7 months of what do you call it? What's the word? Probation or something.
Huh. Was the guy
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. He was okay. I stabbed him in his hand or something like that.
Huh. Do you think more time, like a longer period in jail, would have helped you or not because you would have still found
No,
drugs?
because if you go to jail, you will just learn more criminal stuff. That's the thing you learn in jail. People in jail will teach you other criminal stuff because they want to drag you in the same hole as they are. That's the game. Like because the reality, people in there are like they feel bad about themselves. That's the reality under that tough guy thing and everything. Everybody's feeling bad about themselves, and what better way to do it than bring somebody else down with you?
Hmm.
And you will learn all the criminal skills there and everything.
Mm. And so what's the physical withdrawal like? the first 6 weeks?
Well, it's not that bad. It's like after I made the choice that I'm quitting, it was kind of easy. It you get these physical symptoms like uh, you sleep bad, but yeah. But now I've been clean from nicotine like for 35 days or 38 days, and that was more bad than the drug. So it's
Really?
all relative. Yeah, yeah.
Huh. I thought it would be terrible, like throwing up all the time or like constant
No,
headaches or
it was
something.
yeah. There was a lot of that stuff, but it it went really fast because when you're in rehab, you start to eat a lot and you sleep and you're like in this, how do you say it? You're like in paradise from in the terms of getting sleep and getting healthy lifestyle. So everything is done for you, and so it's a couple of maybe a couple of weeks you sleep bad and you get headaches and you get withdrawals, and but after that it's over. For if you use heroin, that's a different case. But like I told you, I wasn't a heroin addict. I was a street addict.
Huh. That's so good they had that treatment center there then.
Yeah, I actually worked in that treatment center after years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you then find all this other emotional stuff was coming up? Because I guess you talked about this void that you felt from 5 years old, that maybe there was something wrong with you. And then presumably, because we all like have things that we use to emotionally soothe ourselves, whether it's alcohol or drugs or just like
Yeah.
shopping or sex or food or whatever. So did it
Yeah.
transfer into something else?
Yeah. Yeah. Mainly, mainly a few things: video games, sex, and later when I found mixed martial arts again, or mixed martial arts, it transferred to that. But that was a lot later. So I would say video games and sex mostly. But I was going to those meetings, so every day I was going to those meetings, and going to meetings is almost the same thing as self improvement, because what are you doing in meetings? You're talking in front of other people. They're quiet and they're listening to you. You're talking. You're telling about your emotions, your life, your fears, your hopes, and your staying clean. And you're doing it every day, talking with these people. You're working the program, which is 12 steps. You write a lot of stuff down about you, the world, the drugs, the crimes, everything. That's all self improvement. And I've been doing it for 22 years almost. So, but of course, the thing with addiction is that because I will always be an addict, and I can't use drugs or alcohol ever again. And me being addicted to sex or food or games, that's like my addiction won't stay there. It will eventually go back to drugs. That's my addiction. And those addictions, like you said that they're just filling the void. But these meetings, they told me that by sharing in the meeting and talking with other people, I can survive. I can, and of course, when you repeat things many years, you start possibly to learn stuff, and I learned a lot of stuff like talking with people and of course I went through the addictions, other addictions, but they never went that bad as my drug addiction.
Huh. And at the same time, you were healing the part of you within that felt like there was something wrong with you.
Yeah, yeah, I still have that. It never goes away. I still have the void in me, and but I'm so far from it now that of course I can tell you if I stopped going to those meetings and stop self improvement, stop writing, stop reading, stop what I'm doing now, I will go back to the because it will always the word is what's the word in English? Entropy. And you will always the baseline for me is chaotic addicted drug use. That's my baseline. And I will always go back to the baseline if I let myself go back to the baseline. So that's the price you have to pay for using drugs and hurting people. That you have to go to those meetings and you have to take care of yourself. Like, but that's not a big price to pay. That 2 hours every other day you go to a meeting and talk with people and laugh. That's not a fucking hard price to pay for.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And they become your new friends and community and support.
yeah. Of course, the sad thing about it is that most people relapse. So me being clean 20, almost 22 years, I don't really have much friends left from the beginning. But I have like 3 or 4 friends who have been clean for a long time. But the sad truth is that most people relapse. But that's not like that's the difficult part of addiction that somebody might relapse, go back to using drugs, uh, and then come back and stay clean. Or I know a lot of guys that or women that have families, but then they stop going to meetings. They go back to drugs. They lose everything: their kids, their husbands, their wives, and then they might die or they come back. So it's really hard and difficult to measure this kind of what's a success story because somebody might be clean 12 years, relapse and die, or somebody might be clean 12 years, relapse and come back and stay clean for the rest of his life. But you never know. It's
Oh,
yeah,
really? Relapses happen after that long?
yeah. That's like most people relapse. Most
But
people,
after 12 years?
yeah, yeah, because people they start I have I had this thing myself also that you get delusional. Like you think that you don't have to go to meetings anymore. You think that you can because people like to think that they can handle it by themselves. And if you're not an addict, you still might get into as everybody has problems. You might get into trouble. But if you're an addict, you can't fucking do it yourself. You need to go to those meetings or something. You need some kind of a feedback outside from yourself because if you could stop using drugs by yourself, everybody in the world would stop using drugs by themselves. You don't
Yeah.
you need some kind of a feedback from usually from another addict who's been in the same situation. Just to, like I told you, I felt different. But when I'm listening to those people speak, I don't feel different. I feel like I'm not alone. Like they're the same fucking stupid shit that I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is how did you know you had to cut out alcohol as well, but like not not
Because if you think,
nicotine, for example?
because if you think about alcohol, the only difference between alcohol with other drugs is that it's legal. There's no other difference. People can say that there's a difference, but if you do look at it from a chemical point of view, your body won't know. Like if you take heroin, amphetamine, alcohol, your head will get mixed up. Like your mind will know the difference that this is alcohol, this is heroin, but your body won't know the difference. So any drug you use, even alcohol, is a drug. And I can't tell it to other people. Everybody has their own opinion about it. But I like to use this analogy that if alcohol was illegal and we would be introduced to alcohol right now, we would think about it as heroin or other drugs. It wouldn't be any different. But because alcohol is legal, we think it's different. But if you look at Finland, like statistically, we don't have our biggest problem with substance abuse isn't with drugs, it's with alcohol. Yeah. So I knew already before I quit that alcohol is a drug, and because every time I use alcohol, I would use any other drug, and
Yeah.
yeah,
What about weed?
same thing, same thing.
Okay. But like
No,
nicotine or coffee or that was fine.
yeah, because nicotine and coffee are a bit different because there's no how do you say it? You won't get into criminal activity by drinking coffee or using nicotine. You won't. You don't. Even weed, like you have to do some shade or uh, you know this with weed that people get real lethargic and lazy and their mind isn't working that fast. You don't get that with coffee or nicotine. But that said, I think nicotine is bad. I used it for 6 years and it's not good. Like, but I'm not like telling people quit nicotine. I'm just telling what I'm doing also.
Hmm. And so, what is there something you would say to the like 8-year-old version of yourself or the 10-year-old version of yourself before all this happened?
That's a good question. If I would tell that person, that kid, uh, I would like tell him that never stop doing sports and reading and because I believe that I was supposed to do that kind of stuff from the beginning, like read, write. I hated writing, but I loved reading, which is kind of weird because I love writing now. But and I love sports, and if I could tell that person, that kid, I would tell him to do that stuff because that's what I got back into when I got clean. I got back into sports. Became a professional fighter. I later I got back to reading, and now for the past 2 years I've been writing and building my social media presence. So that's what
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, I have so many more questions for you about that, but it's midnight for you. So,
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. If you want to ask something,
no, I feel like it will take an hour. Like, we can do another one at some point if you're up for it. Because I feel like it's the whole next chapter of your life, which is like,
yeah, yeah,
because it's like
yeah,
a clean
yeah,
slate as a 21-year-old of like how you made the decision of what you're going to do next, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
more than like a 5-minute conversation. Um,
yeah, yeah. It's
and MMA, like I know nothing about that. Anyway, so and
yeah,
now, yeah, you're like in a whole new chapter of
yeah.
building these successful YouTube channels and stuff. Okay, so do you have anything to say before I ask you the last 3 quick questions?
No, ask away.
Okay, so speaking of books, is there one book that had like the biggest impact on you?
The biggest impact, I would say two books. One is a fantasy book. It's called The Time of the Twins. It's just a fantasy book, but it kind of saved my life and mentally saved my life. Then, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. You might know that one. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the most common one that people say.
yeah, it's a so fucking good book. Yeah.
I've only read half of it. I need to finish it. But I his other book, like had a massive impact on me. A New Earth.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
didn't
see.
read that, but I think I have the same experience that you with. I read like The Power of Now 3 times, but the other times I only read the start because the first 30 minutes is the best. You kind of get what all you need from the first 30 minutes.
Huh.
That's my experience.
Cool. Okay. How do you stay grounded?
Grounded. Mm, I don't stay grounded. I'm not that kind of a person. I'll try to not stay grounded because I believe that uh, I have this belief that you you become what you think about. Like because like I told you about the drug addiction, I made the choice that I started using those drugs, inject those drugs when I made the choice to myself that I had this vision of me being some kind of a weird, I don't know how to even call it, but I envisioned myself of using drugs and having fun, and that was the thing I became. Later, I envisioned to become a professional fighter. I became one. Now I'm envisioning of being a writer and a successful podcaster and making a lot of money with social media. And I know I can do it, so I'm not staying grounded. I'm not. I just believe you. If you think you're depressed and you won't become anything, you won't become anything. But if you think you will be a successful podcaster, you will be a successful podcaster. If you like emotionally, I'm not talking about having a fucking daydream of winning in the lottery, but if you emotionally invested, think about stuff. I just believe that that's what you become, and you can do it like you can write it down and you can think about it every day and start doing stuff to get it. So I just believe in that. That's what I have experienced. That you can not in a fucking weird mystic way, but it's you just become what you think about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and I'm obsessed like hell, so I know I will do it.
Okay. Last question. What three words describe the best version of you?
Sorry, the connection was bad.
What three words describe the best version of Kai?
Ah, mm, funny, determined. Uh, mm, last word. Funny, determined, deep, deep.
Nice. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I don't know what happened to my voice then. Thanks so much.
This was fun. This is always like it's a little bit harder to tell your story because I told my story like a million times, but because I'm speaking in English, I it's not so fluent to tell the story. Like all the little stuff you can tell in Finnish, I have to like talk a little bit different and but I think my English is pretty good and you understand what I'm telling you. So yeah,
Yeah, your English is great.
yeah, with a fucking weird Finnish accent.